Okay, today and the next day we're going to be practicing graphing currency. So in the last time we talked about the value of a country's currency is always in relationship to another country. So we can't talk about the value of the US dollar without comparing it to what? Are we talking against the peso, the Canadian dollar, the euro, the pound? What are we comparing it against? So we're always going to have two graphs. We're going to have one country's currency, supply and demand of that, and then another country's currency. And so it always is in relationship to the other. So look at the graphs that we have down here. This is the supply and demand of the US dollar. And remember, on the y-axis, we usually have price level, inflation. Even on loanable funds, we have real interest rate, which is the price of a loan. So the price is always shown on the y-axis. Quantity is usually on the x-axis, where that's like the quantity of all things, like GDP, output, just quantity in general. So you can put Q on the x-axis, but on the y-axis for price, well, the price of a currency is, well, how much of one currency do you need in order to exchange it for that currency? So the price of a dollar, if we're comparing it to euros, is going to be how many euros I need per dollar that I'm going to exchange for. So it's euros per dollar, and that's the euro symbol. So I know that this is the dollar graph because the dollar is on the denominator. So it was kind of hard for me to write it. Usually it's euro divided by dollar, euro per dollar, but you can write it sideways like I have right here, like euro divided by dollar. But it's euro over dollar, kind of like miles per gallon. It's euros I need per dollar. So the dollar's on the denominator of the dollar graph. We have a regular supply curve labeled S for supply, a regular demand curve labeled D for demand. Don't forget your boops. Boop, boop, boop. Same thing on the euro graph. We're going to this time have dollars over euro. How many dollars do I need per euro? Dollars per euro. That's how you would say that. And then the demand curve is sloped downwards, labeled D. Supply is sloped upwards, labeled S. And then quantity down here on the y-axis. And don't forget your boops. So the good thing about a currency graph is there are very specific rules. And if you follow the rules, you can't go wrong. So you can always go back at the end of the problem and like, did I finish it? Did I do it correctly? And there's 3 rules. And if you follow these 3 rules, you will always get the right answer. First rule is when one currency appreciates, the other currency will depreciate. So how you know a country's currency is appreciating is if the price is going up. So you see on the y-axis, that's the price. So dollar over euro over dollar, if that goes up, if your boop, boop, boops, if your equilibrium price goes up, the other graph will have it go down. So if you have 2 graphs and both the price levels went up, you did something wrong. One currency will appreciate while the other currency will depreciate. That's one rule. The second rule is if one currency has a shift in demand, the other currency will shift supply. So you'll never have like a dollar and a euro graph both having shifts of demand or both having shifts of supply. One will have a supply shift, one will have a demand shift. You don't know which one, but it's never going to be the same demand or both supply. And the last rule is the shifts will always be in the same direction. Different lines. One has a shift of demand while the other graph has a shift of supply, but the shifts will be in the same direction. They'll both be going left or they'll both be going right. So same direction, different lines. One appreciates, one depreciates, and that's the rules. So here is an example. And I wonder if I can draw on this. I don't think I will be able to, so I'm going to turn my camera around. I'm going to actually draw on the board. I'll be right back. Okay. So you can see me a little bit. There we go. That's a little bit better. Okay, so here is our dollar graph, and here is our euro graph. Let's pretend the scenario is Mrs. Taylor goes to Europe. And you know what I need in Europe? I need euros because Europe's not going to take my US American dollar because that would be a pain for that store to then have to go convert it. So it's up to me to go convert it before I go to Europe. Don't go, don't be exchanging your currency at the airport. They're going to rip you off with fees and stuff. So they know, do it at the bank before you leave, your bank. Okay. So here we have the dollar graph, we have the euro graph. If Miss Taylor goes to Europe, you have to ask yourself, what does Miss Taylor need? Well, Miss Taylor needs dollars because that's what they have in Europe if I want to buy anything. And how do I show needing euros? Well, needing, that's demand. I demand euros if I'm going to go to Europe. So here's our euro graph. Remember, the one on the left is the dollar, the one on the right is the euro, and I'm going to demand more euros. I'm going to shift my demand curve to the right. I'm going to have a new equilibrium right here. So we have basically P2 and Q2. It looks like the value of the euro just increased. That's called appreciated because there was more demand. When there's more demand of a country's currency, it appreciates. Okay, let's follow the rules. When one currency appreciates, the other one will depreciate. Well, the value of the euro just went up. That's appreciating. So the dollar must depreciate. If one currency has a shift in demand, the other country will have a shift of supply. We just did a demand shift on the euro side, so let's shift supply. Well, which direction? Let's look at our third rule. The shifts will be in the same direction, either both to the left or both to the right. And so if this euro graph had a rightward shift of demand, the dollar graph is going to have a rightward shift of supply this time. So find your supply curve. Let's shift it to the right. Supply 2. Boop, 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 boop. P2, Q2. Don't forget your arrows between your equilibriums. Price fell, quantity increased, price went up over here, and quantity increased over here. Okay, so here's the thing. Let's say if we did all of our rules. Let me check. When one currency appreciates, the other currency will depreciate. Well, we just had the dollar graph over here do something and the euro graph over here. Let's see what happened to the price. The price of the dollar fell. That's called depreciating. The price of the euro went up. That's called appreciating. Okay, so the first rule of currency, we did it. One appreciated was the euro and one depreciated. That was the dollar. If one currency has a shift of demand, we did that with the euro. The other country will have a shift of supply. We did that on the dollar. Check. And last but not least, the shifts will be in the same direction. Demand went to the right, supply went to the right of the other graph. We are good. We did all 3 shifts, all 3 rules, and we have a correct answer here. When Miss Taylor goes to Europe, that will cause the dollar to depreciate and the euro to appreciate because I am demanding more of that country's currency, so the value of it's going to go up. Here's what's happening though. I understand needing more euros, demand more euros. That makes more sense. If I go to Europe, I'm going to demand more euros. But why does supply change of the dollar when I go to Europe? Think of it this way. If you go to the bank, you're exchanging your dollars to get more euros. So you give the bank dollars. You put your dollars on the counter and say, I'd like to exchange these for euros, please. And so you put the dollars on the bank counter. They give you euros and off you go. You go to Europe. But you left your dollars here in a bank, and now there's more supply of dollars in the market because what's the bank going to do with it? They're going to loan it out. Now it's more is in circulation because it's no longer in your pocket. It's hard to circulate it if it's in your pocket, but if it's in the bank, if it's in the market, there's more now supply of dollars. And that's why we shifted supply to the right. There's more supply of dollars in the marketplace because you demanded euros. So you're going to dump your dollars to demand more euros. So this is basically like the dumping of dollars. Dumping of USD, US dollar, because you are dumping it into the market to exchange it for euros. So then you can go off to Europe and buy a baguette or whatever you buy in Europe. Anyway, that just explains the three rules of currency and how they relate to each other. So, what causes, besides like Miss Taylor goes to Europe, what causes the shifts of currency? Well, you really only need to think about demand shifts. What causes people to demand a country's currency or to stop demanding a country's currency? Because the supply of currency only shifts when people are dumping their currency at the bank, or they decide, no, I'm going to keep it to myself. So there's not really supply shifters of currency. If you follow the rules, yes, you will be shifting supply, but it's really the act of keeping the currency to yourself and less supply in the market, or dumping your currency because you want to go somewhere else. That's what shifts supply. So what shifts demand? A whole bunch of things. Here are the factors that shift the demand for a country's currency. So these are our shifters, and there's unfortunately no like acronym for these things. But the first one is travel and tastes. Obviously, this was my example just now. I was traveling to a different country, so I demand that country's currency. Demand of a currency increases when people travel to that country. So there's high demand for this country's goods and services because people are traveling there. Or maybe it's a taste change. Maybe all of a sudden things from South Korea are really, really popular. And so people want to buy a whole bunch of stuff there. Or maybe things from France are very in right now. And so people are going to need, that's euros, people are going to need euros if they want to buy all these French things. Relative income. Notice how all of these, except for taste and travel, all of them kind of start off with the word relative, because that's what currency is all about. You, your country, in relationship to another country's currency. And so it's all in relationship to another country. So relative income. Another way to say that is GDP. When a country's income or GDP increases, we are wealthier. We make more money because our GDP is high. And so we demand goods and services from every country. And so I'm going to want some more things from Canada. I'm going to want some more things from like Germany, maybe a nice German car. I'm going to want some things from China or India or Taiwan. And I need those countries' currencies. I'm going to do things. So that's probably why the US dollar usually is not that strong of a currency, because we are constantly demanding other countries' currencies because we're so rich, because our income is high. And so the richer you are of a country, the more you buy of other countries' things. There's also relative inflation. So think of inflation rates. What does that mean? Inflation is like how high the price is, how expensive things are. So where would you want to buy things? Do you want to buy things where inflation's really high and it's expensive? Or do you want to buy things where things are relatively cheap? I think probably cheap. So demand of a country's currencies increase. People want that country's currency when they have low inflation, when prices are cheap and things are cheap. I will demand that country's currency. It's a sale. And you're probably going to demand less of a nation's currency when they have really high inflation. Why do you think you don't find any why don't we import stuff from Zimbabwe? Because they have extremely high inflation. Things are expensive. And so we're not going to buy things from a country when we can't afford their stuff anyway, because they have too high inflation. Interest rates. This is a tricky one. So you can't take out a loan from a different country. They don't know you. They're not going to give you a loan. Who are you? You're just some foreigner that's going to take that loan and then go back to your home country. That's not going to happen. But you can save your money in any country you like, because sure, they'll take your money. Not a big deal. And so when we talk about interest rates, when we talk about currency, we're not talking about the price of a loan anymore, because it's not going to affect you if you can't take out loans from a different country. What you have to be thinking of is the money that you can make from savings accounts there. And so when interest rates, where do you want to save your money? Do you want to save your money in a place with high interest rates? Or do you want to save your money in a place with low interest rates? Think about it. Money in a savings account earns interest. This is interest that you're getting, not interest that you have to pay. So when I'm talking about like taking out a loan, I like low interest rates, but now I'm not talking about taking out a loan. I'm talking about where should I save my money? Let me save my money with the highest interest, because then I can earn more of a return on my financial investments. Remember in that balance of payments, and there was like the current account and the financial account. So remember, we're talking about like stocks and bonds because that was what was in the financial account. So you demand currency that has high interest rates because you'll make more money on your financial investments. And you don't want to demand a country's currency when they have really, really low interest rates. Why save my money there? Why have stocks and bonds in that country if I'm not going to be earning any interest? So you're looking for high interest rates, but low inflation rates. You want things that are cheap, low inflation, but you want interest that'll earn you more money, high interest rates. And then obviously, if you expect any of those previous factors to occur, they will. So today, tomorrow, we're going to be practicing shifting currency. What happens to the dollar? What happens to the euro? If these scenarios are in play. So just quick recap. Here are the rules of currency. You follow the rules, you are good to go. Anyway, have a great afternoon, and I will see you guys later. Bye.